Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns. Coming to you live this morning from an unusual location. I happen to be in Key West, Florida today. Let me show you what it looks like outside. Sunny, sort of warm. Not too bad overall. Just wanted to give you a view of it. Let me fade over there. Into the coffee break chat. Have some guests for you this morning. I have Drew Nugent of Nugent's Follies fame, and we're going to be talking about live streaming his new album and the launch party for that new album that's coming up. And we also have with us today Kristin Lide-Hall from the Share Food program, and we'll be talking to them about that sort of stuff. So because I'm coming to you live from an unusual location, I'm not exactly sure everything is working right and not set up in my normal studio, so it's a little wonk, but we'll make it through the day. Drew, you ready to come up on screen and give us a talk? All right, Drew gave me a thumbs up. I can't hear him yet, so I'll assume that. All right. The the horrors of 2020
and now 2021, it's even crazier. Look at this. Look at this guy. Oh, it's a mess in here. Sorry. I'm so jealous that you're in Key West right now. I'm still laying out a rag mat for the winter boots and the muck that I don't want to track into my house. It's just, I don't blame you. I'm in the same boat. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm not lagging on your end, am I? I feel like it's moving weird. Okay, good. It'll just be, man, we can't see the Three Stooges. They're right up there. Come on. This is unacceptable. Look at them. That's the Pep Boys. My favorite was, I'm old enough to still remember when the one Pep Boy had a cigar in his mouth in the advertising. And when I was about 6 or 7 or 8, somewhere around there, they took the cigar out because they found it inappropriate. That's not surprising. I mean, come on, there's so many smokers in this city. You'd think that people never heard of lung cancer or emphysema. And I'm a former smoker. Like, I smoked for about 17 years, and I'm glad I quit as a vote.
I am on air. Apparently I'm having a little difficulty. I'm getting a notification from um my associate producer that the audio is a bit wonky. Like I said, I'm not in my normal place, so Let's see if this helps. There we go. All right, now everybody should be able to hear you. Sorry about that, Drew. And also welcoming to the screen Ardencia Hall Crambe, Doctor Extraordinaire. And I'm just going to add you via pin. There we go. All right, so now everybody should see and hear everyone. That might work better. Oh, the joys of remote production. Drew, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about virtual production and live streaming. You're doing live streaming with the Nugent Follies?
Yes, we're actually using the wonderful world of Zoom for the Nugent Follies productions. And in the before times, we used theaters.
What are theaters?
Yeah, what are those things? Well, kids, once upon a time. No, we actually have gotten to do it in some really amazing venues. My favorite venue we got to do it in, albeit a very disorganized one, was the Trocadero Theater. And rest in peace, Trocadero. I don't know what's going to become of that old beauty, but that is one of the most historic theaters you could ever wander into in Philadelphia.
It is. It's a beautiful place. And so tell us a little bit about Nugent's Follies. What do you do with Nugent's Follies?
It really started when I kind of turned to my manager at one point. I've always been a huge fan of vaudeville and classic movies and comedy in general. And I always considered myself a student of all of those things, aside from music, because music's always been I think that the burning fuel that's gotten me into everything, because music was such an integral part of these things I just mentioned. And I just really liked the idea of show people, just, constantly on, making people feel right at home, making people laugh, making people go, wow, just making people ultimately leave with a sense of something they didn't otherwise enter the room with. And they'll remember, hopefully, in a good light. But with Nugent's Follies, I, of course, kind of stole the name off of the Ziegfeld Follies. The other troops, of course, that use the word follies to describe what was going to happen in the show, as a bit of variety, bit of vaudeville, bit of everything, whether it's silly or seductive. It's and everything in between. Of taking it virtually was the Bindlestiff Family Circus, and they're a wonderful troupe. And I'm drawing a blank where they're based out of, because I'm having a blank. I draw a blank where I'm based out of anymore, because I do so much virtually anymore that, one night I'm coming to you out of Philadelphia, another night I'm going to be broadcasting through New York from Philadelphia, another night I'm broadcasting through London through Philadelphia. It's just ridiculous. I'm already crazy.
It's ridiculous, but it's also exciting. So more people
exciting.
Are getting to see your work, so that's a beautiful
thing. I agree.
It is a beautiful thing. I think that the radical acceleration of the digital delivery of content and entertainment is really pushing people to see a lot of things that they might not have ever seen before, and I think that that's really interesting. We're getting to I don't know if it'll be good or bad. Sometimes, you know, when we start to homogenize entertainment and social interaction, it can lead to bad things, but sometimes it can lead to good things as well. Like, you know, you wouldn't have rock and roll unless there had been the homogenization and the participation of jazz and blues along with rock, you know, along with country and producers in the country and performing arts area. So
oh, I agree. The other thing is, I think a big deal for this, for me at least, for somebody who struggles with, you know, just a lot of shit going on upstairs. Sorry for the language, but I have, it's been that way my whole life. So for me, pushing myself to do something different, let alone learn something new, and stepping outside my zone of comfort, my little bubble, it's a big deal. And I think it's a big deal for not only me, but for a lot of people that have similar issues or are, you know, we're in, you know, in the same struggle kind of. But I think it's a big deal and a beautiful thing, because otherwise we wouldn't get pushed out of our boundaries. We wouldn't get pushed out of our comfort zones. We would sit there in mediocrity, as it were, and just like say, oh, this is good enough. This is fine. I'm just going to go along doing this. But no, I said this to my folks the other night, that I think this is a time that's going to mark who's a survivor and who's not. And
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I hate to say that so bluntly, but I have to, because it's true. Because if I sugarcoat it to myself, then I'm just going to act like a wimp. It's you got to keep the hustle going. You got to be a survivor. You got to. I mean, yes, for the last 10 years, I've been a performer. I've been a band leader. I've been a musician. I've been staying on the fringe, as it were, as far as music goes. I get ass clowns going, oh, you do that old timey stuff, don't you? Like, no, I just play classic jazz, and I venture to where the kids from Temple don't often go, because they weren't taught to do that. And that was my big beef with a lot of the jazz programs, is that there was no life before bebop. And that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to know about Louis Armstrong. I wanted to know about Fats Waller. I wanted to know about Duke and Jelly Roll Morton, and, you know, the guys that really made jazz. Like
the foundation of jazz.
Yeah, like I want to talk to the fathers and the mothers, and I want to hang out with Mary Lou Williams. Like I really want to know, like, I could go on and on about that subject, but that to me has always been where I've been coming from. And I figure now more than ever, got to get creative with how you're bringing this stuff to people. And you can't just stop because the pandemic shut everything down. Yes, that sucks on ice. It really does. But my biggest thing was the first week I was out of work, I go star crazy, because playing music is an extension of me that, you know, people are like, oh, how did you get into music? I'm like, music got into me. I don't know how this whole just derailment happened in my life, but it was beautiful, and I thank God every day for it. But when the first week of no work happened, I was so freaked out. I just was like, are you kidding me? Like, this isn't real. Like, I was doing so good. The year was off to a great start. So I didn't even throw up a tip sign at that point. I just figured out how to go live on my computer and went live. And the next thing I know, people are asking, where's your tip link? Where's your blah, blah, blah? When is this happening again? And I'm like, every night. And that was stupid because I oversaturated myself. But now that I got it down to a weekly format, I think it's a lot of fun for people to have at least an hour a week to be able to be like, oh, that's my guy. We're gonna listen to some jazz.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole concept behind the coffee break chat too. You know, like I was sitting there, you know, in my house and going, you know, I haven't done anything. I haven't seen anybody. I haven't talked to anybody for like 2 weeks. This is not gonna work.
I miss theater. That's what you were jonesing in your house. I miss theater.
Yep. Definitely.
Yep. I same way. That was me. It was like, okay, how are we gonna do this? But we're going to do this. and we're going to make this happen one way or another, you know. And so I think virtual theater is here to stay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so too.
I think so. We're going to go back to doing live, but I think so many more people are going to be adding a virtual element to what they do in-house, as well as bringing it out to the world. So I'm excited about that new. And I don't even know if it's new, because if you go back and look at theater's history, particularly looking in the 1970s and 80s with performance art, those elements of technology were already there, but we were still keeping it somewhat in-house. Now we're just learning how to broadcast our work to further corners. But the technology has always existed side by side with theater.
Well, I think what's interesting is that, I mean, we've always had the ability to broadcast, but, you know, basically, with the guys that I work with, you know, when we're covering the news, we've brought what used to be a building that was then brought down into a van. Now we have it in the form of a cell phone and a couple little extras that you can carry with you that are all pocket size. You can literally, you know,
the technology shifted.
Yeah, you can produce, and the accessibility to that technology shifted. I mean, like, you know, it might cost me, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 to set up somebody just right now. But look, you know, as more people buy this stuff, more people get access to this stuff, the cost of it's going to go down. We're going to get to the point where, you know, literally anyone can produce broadcast quality, something that somebody would be willing to watch,
Right.
From their pocket.
And the streaming wasn't there that would allow us to broadcast it. And now those avenues existed. So all of that together has made it much more feasible for people to have, you know, virtual theater in their homes all the time. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays against regular television and you know, and that kind of thing. So it's very interesting to see how this is going to work out.
I did an experiment with the PDC last weekend. Yeah, last weekend, and doing, you know, kind of levels. You know, theater traditionally always has access levels, and also it was an experiment in like the audience feedback sort of thing. Like, I think a lot of what the streaming format is missing is kind of the audience feedback aspect. You don't get the laughs, you don't get the claps, etc. Or it can be disruptive in the streaming scenario. So what we did was we created a live stream that went out to audiences on Facebook Live for $5, and then we created one that people could come into the on Zoom environment. On Zoom is separate than Zoom just by a little bit, just because it has a ticketing system. And in the on Zoom environment, they were encouraged to keep their camera on and keep their microphones on so that they could clap and laugh and whatever they wanted to do. I found it enjoyable as a producer and as a director, but there were so it was a festival format. There were 7-10 minute short plays. Some of the other directors did not like the audience feedback environment, would rather their piece exist without the possibility of being interrupted or without the addition of the audience feedback. I mean, you're both directors and producers. How would you feel? What would be your preference?
I think. Oh, you want to go first?
Sure. I would like to try it first. I would love to see a recording of how that worked for you, because part of me says, how can you not like audience response instantaneously, because that's what theater is. The audience is right there reacting in the space with you. It's that, at least in the real world, that live exchange. So it would be interesting to see how that translates into a Zoom world. But there's also a part of me that says I can see how that can become disruptive for the actor, because you're waiting, because even in real life, you're always waiting for the audience to hit that crest and come down, and getting that timing right, and trying to get that timing right in the Zoom world when you're not in the room with other actors who are also trying to get that timing right, and not, you know, the energy is different, if I'm making sense. You know what I'm saying? So
I agree.
I would almost treat it, if I felt that I really wanted an audience response, I would almost treat it like it was a radio play, and treat it like you know, and add in my own sound effects, and add in where I want the audience to laugh, you know, and add in those things in those places, so that I could have that in the recording rather than trying to do it live. But once again, I would always test it out first, just to see.
I agree with that. And also because I think focusing in on what you said, that it is disruptive, and that I already call playing into the computer, playing into the void, because I'm sitting here, I'm yucking it up, I'm playing, I keep looking sideways like, there's my audience, there's my folks. But no, there's nobody there. There's just this box just looking back at me with soulless eyes. And I just can't, I can't perform to that sometimes. I'm getting a little bit better with it, but it really in the beginning freaked me out genuinely, and it was frustrating to no end. So I think adding the factor of a virtual audience, as it were, it could almost be disruptive because of the lag times, and also, like, you know, the delay. And I just think in general, they're not here. You're not in the same room as them. There's a major disconnect. And I think, I mean, not ruling it out, but I would also like to have seen it, like, you know, do a test of it first. But the radio aspect of it reminded me of what we were speaking earlier, is that going back to the 1920s, when radio first really became a thing, the first thing it ultimately did was broadcast out of hotels with jazz bands and orchestras. And they would have an MC saying, you know, hey, all you folks out there tuning in, we're coming live from the, so there was no room for, you know, disturbance. Like, yeah, they had an audience possibly in the hotel ballroom or wherever they were, but it's a different thing. I get it, but I think it's similar in a way. It's such a,
well, I'm saying the elements of being able to, like I said, being able to add in those elements, those sound effects of doors opening and closing, the sound effects of laughter, like, you know, like you would in the old radio play, you would have the person there making the shoes stop by doing the actual shoes, you know, that kind of thing. Adding those things to this virtual world would be fun. If you needed that saturation, if you, as a director, you wanted that whole saturation, that feel of the whole thing, I would go through that process and doing it that way rather than doing, because the lag would bother me, I think, in Zoom a lot, or any type of streaming process.
As a producer, what I did was I pulled the actors into a stage Zoom. And then took all of that content, packaged it together with audio effects and video effects, and broadcast it into the house Zoom, the audience area. And that was my attempt to limit the audience possibility of it, but at the same time give the actors the choice of hearing or not hearing. Because, you know, after the first one, I asked, you know, I left, basically what I had was, I had two laptops and, sorry, I'll bring my hands on screen, two laptops, and this one's, you know, stage, this one's with me and my camera in the stage. This one's the audience and what is coming from the stage being broadcast into it. But the audio out of this one I could turn on my laptop speakers, and then my stage Zoom could hear it, because you know, it was just audible through my microphone. So after the first time, I just asked them if, you know, asked the actors if that was causing any distraction, or if that was, if it was helpful, and they actually asked that I turn off my microphone during their acting, but turn it on between pieces so that they could hear the audience feedback between pieces. So but yeah, you know, and then in the Zoom room, the audience, where the audience was, they're all interacting with each other via text, via audible response, etc. It's just, it's interesting. I was also saying that it would be nice if, as in the real world, you could, in the real world, we have these kind of separate spaces. We have, you know, the stage, we have the house, and the setting is designed, the physical setting is designed in such a way that it by architecture ducks the audio from the audience, right? Like in a production environment, you have to choose how loud you want each element, right? And you can do what's called ducking. You can take the audio from one source and say, when there's audio coming from here, everything else is down 10 decibels or whatever. But in a Zoom environment, everybody's at unity, at max. And there's no automatic ducking. But what would be interesting is to have an automatic ducking feature for the audience, so that the audience can feedback, but the focus never comes off of the stage, or the broad, you know, like whatever the keynote speaker is, or whoever is most important in there.
As a performer, I've gone to, I should say, as an audience member, I've gone to events where they have shown the audience. You could, so the performers could see us. We pay to go into the Zoom stage room, and so we're in there, and they could see us sitting in our seats, but they can't hear us. You know what I'm saying? And I think as a performer, I would enjoy that, because I would still at least get to see, be able to read some of the audience's body language to get a sense of how they are feeling about the show and stuff like that. That's a really good point. But I, you know, and so that would be cool. But to actually hear, once again, even as you were talking, James, you were lagging. There were breaks in the way that you, in your conversation about how you set everything up and what you did. And so that would bother me as a performer, because I'm trying to, you know, because we hear it and it's like, what are they reacting to now, rather than it being in real time, if that makes sense. So.
Well, this setup isn't ideal for broadcast, but I'm not plugged in, you know, I'm on the Wi-Fi, etc. So there are going to be little, but as a broadcaster, I can set up a near lagless environment where there's no inherent lag to the broadcast between the audience and the performers. These are all, you know, wild, interesting questions. Anyway, sorry. Just noticing that some of the current events that I wanted to talk about. We seem to be stuck in the past a little bit. And interestingly, you know, like we're referencing the past right now. And comparing things to the past, and trying to make them work in the present based on how they used to work in the past. But as a whole, the nation, the federal government especially seems to be stuck in the past, and I'm wondering how we push into the present, into our current needs, and get the federal government there. You know, we have these false equivalencies, you know, comparing cost of living in, say, Alabama to the cost of living in the United States in general, and then we're also allowing our representatives to push these false equivalencies into the dialogue about things like increasing the minimum wage. How do we get to a point where we don't have these false equivalencies in our governing, in our dialogue, in our social dialogue?
I'm gonna say, I'm not seeing how we, unless we set, you know, a nationwide standard of living, you know, across the board, this is the base or whatever that everybody should have, or what we think they should have across the board. Because otherwise, everybody's going to look at it in a regional sense. If you live in a small community, you're not going to have the same cost of living as someone who lives in a major urban area. You're not going to have the same issues when it comes to the delivery of services from your community the same way you would in an urban area. So the cost of those things are going to be varied unless we as a country say, look, this is the standard of living that everybody should be at. This is the base level. Everybody should have access to free healthcare. Everybody should have access to a decent home living environment, education, at least K through 12, and at least the first 2 years of college free, those types of things. And that sounds just real socialist to folks. And it makes their head explode. And they don't want to talk about those kind of things. But that's the only way to get certain rhetoric out of our national dialogue.
I think there was a great quote from Harry Truman who said, everything that's progressive was called socialism at one point.
Yeah. Everything.
And I couldn't agree more with what you just said. That just it really is a shame that how backwards everything is, and still is. I should say, still is. It's just like, you know, it just feels some days like we are just devolving as a society. And whether it's the way we treat others, whether it's the way we treat ourselves or the world around us, it's mind-boggling, and it's depressing, and it's angering, it's infuriating, but it's I think I get very frustrated.
Yeah, it's a frustrating situation. So
yeah, I mean, I constantly wonder, there's other false equivalences too. So like, you know, we're all three of us, we're artists. We, you know, we think about things a little bit differently than your average bear for the most part. We you know, we do artwork for a living, and you know, there's no political group called artists. Like there's no yeah, you know, like there's socialists, there's nationalists, there's whatever. But people always talk about politics on a spectrum, or as if it was a spectrum, as if it was like this there's definitely these two ends to something. There's the left and there's the right. There's the Republicans and the Democrats. There's the liberals and the conservatives. There's And the big false equivalence that's out right now is there's the white nationalists and there's Antifa. So I've been in this conversation all week with this guy online about the existence or non-existence of Antifa as an organization. I think I've successfully shown him through his own references that Antifa isn't an organization, but rather a position, political
Mindset.
position. Yeah.
I just don't understand how people can't understand that if you're against fascism, you're Antifa. That's just anti-fascism. It's that just to me is how simple it breaks down. And I'm not a very brilliant being. I'm not Stephen Hawking. I'm not some great mind of the century. I'm just a dude that plays music, but I can even see that.
In the spelling, no less.
What's that?
In the spelling of the name, no less.
Yeah.
In the spelling of the name, no less.
I mean, I was a pretty good speller growing up. Math, not so much. But spelling, I could kick me some ass at spelling. And that was just a pretty easy one. That was like, that's the easing question. It felt like right there, But
we also are a country that kind of vibes on dichotomy. We have to have, there's very little gray. It's black and white.
All or nothing at all.
It's blue or red. It's all or nothing. It's, it's real hard for us at times to find that middle ground, to come to that sense that there are more gradients of color in that spectrum than we think. You know what I'm saying? So
but I don't think there are. So the false equivalence then for me is the comparison of Antifa to a political organization like the Proud Boys.
Yeah. Antifa's not a registered political organization, but Proud Boys is. You know what I'm saying? So they declared who they are in comparison to Antifa. Antifa doesn't have enough. Once again, it's a school of thought more so than any type of physical organization. It's just people who are anti-fascist, as has been pointed out by Drew. There is no president to go register it and say, "Hey, we are now a political organization." It doesn't. That is anti. What is the word I'm looking? That is anti-Antifa or something like that. Organization like that is anti-Antifa.
I also wanted to talk about the minimum wage. So some interesting. I've had some interesting conversation offline about the minimum wage, and I wanted to bring it up with you all and see what your thoughts are. We're very small businesses, and the counter proposal from the Republicans in the Senate and House have now includes let's increase the minimum wage to $11 a year or $11 an hour over 5 years, and let's also make a carve out for small businesses with under 20 employees that they don't have to pay $11 an hour as a minimum wage.
Only if they can guarantee that the cost of living does not rise in 5 years. Can they guarantee that?
Yeah.
No.
Just asking.
No. And interestingly, that the cost of living also came up because the Democratic proposal, once it's increased to 15 by 2025, is then tied with increases based on cost of living increase. So I think
which a salary should be based on anyway.
Right.
Imagine that. They say this is how much you are supposed to be able to live off of, and this is how much you earn, and they kind of meet each other.
I don't know. By 2025, are we going to even be in a place like right now? $15 an hour is pretty much the minimum for a livable wage.
And that's, I mean, once again, that's something that our government, we as people have to address. Seriously, when does it stop? And when does the importance of humanity and human life and standards for that life take precedence?
It's a good question. Oop, wrong button. There we go. Get it back. Sorry.
That's a pretty cool sequence. Do I get one of them too?
Yeah, sure. Y'all are on what you're looking at in Zoom is basically a confidence monitor. It's a virtual camera from my broadcast, so you're seeing what I'm broadcasting. Wow. So every once in a while I can get stuck in a loop. Let's see. Also wanted to talk about, so we have a good 15 minutes to deal with the EIDL, the PPP, and the SVOG this week. We're missing a guest, so I'm not sure where that guest is, but we'll take advantage of it. Again, we're all small business owners, what would be considered micro businesses or small businesses. And one way that the federal government seems to be keenly aware of our existence and our needs is they've created several programs to help smaller businesses with economic recovery. Philadelphia actually also came out with one recently. They just yesterday announced that they're going to be creating a $1 million artists grant program. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be targeted.
Good work, James, on that. Good work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it feels like a step in the right direction, as Gabby said in her post about it. Councilmember O contacted me and was like, you should probably hold off on your congratulations of the other council members, and I was like, don't get me wrong, I'm going to still fight for 1% for the arts. I think that 1% of Philadelphia's budget being dedicated towards the arts is the bare minimum. But this is at least a start. We're getting somewhere. So we were at $4 million in spending per year for the OACCE and Philadelphia Cultural Fund, PCF. They cut that to zero. They gave PCF back 1.2 million. They gave the African American History Museum itself directly 500,000, and the OACCE got reorganized, remained at a budget item of zero. This proposed basically councilmanic prerogative bill. Basically, they're just doing an end run around the executive. They're just doing it by councilmanic prerogative. Is going to take what did I just say? 1.3 million. The 300,000 is going to be spent towards administering the program, and it's basically going to rehire a couple of people for the OACCE and give the OACCE $1 million to hand out as grants to artists and small arts organizations. And yeah, it's a step in the right direction, and to the point that was made by some folks, no, it's not a fully refunding of the arts and culture in Philadelphia. No, we're not back to $4 million, which isn't even enough. 4 million was 0.008% of the Philadelphia budget, and we should be at 1%. So no, I'm not gonna stop pushing for more money, but yes, great. You know, at least we're being recognized as an integral part of the city budget and city economic machine. As I said in my post online, I think this will give us a little bit of momentum into an economic recovery. I think a necessary bit of momentum into economic recovery. I don't know. What do you all think? Are you excited?
I'm just happy something's being done. Like, I remember when that headline hit. That was one of the most crushing blows I've ever felt in my life. It was just feeling like, wow, they already don't give a shit about us, but we know this. We've done this for some time, but now they really don't. And like, for me, I'm no stranger to hard work. Like, I've always had side hustles, side jobs. I still do. Whether I'm pushing a mop or cleaning a bathroom, I'm going to do what I got to do to feed my music habit. And that's why, yes, I believe heavily in having a decent minimum wage, because folks like yours truly, among how many millions of others out there, need that help, especially when we can't do what we're supposed to be freaking doing. So that's, beyond infuriating. And I'm just glad that there's people like you that are taking the initiative to try and get something done, even if it's not a big wave. At least we're making a ripple.
Having been an educator for a long time, I'm always used to, and I'll use the term administrators, cutting the arts before they cut anything else. Oh, we'll get rid of this because, as we know, at the beginning of the pandemic, the New York Times ran a story about what people considered to be essential jobs, and the arts and artists were on the list of non-essential jobs. And so many people are walking around with this mindset that the arts and artists are not necessary for society to function. We could look at history to know that that is not true, because art and culture have always been parts of great societies. Those societies that lack art and culture often are doomed, are often under fascist, tyrannical rule. And so art and culture expresses that there is thinking happening in that society, that there are thoughts and ideas and imagining happening in the city, so that there's I'll use the word creativity. And so seeing that 4 million go was not a surprise. It's often a surprise to see when they give it back, when they start to give some of it back. So I was really happy to see that y'all had been able to win some of the money back. I'm interested in understanding and wanting to know how much money does the arts actually bring into the city?
Oh, we covered that a lot of times.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? And really get people to understand how much, especially in a city like Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a living freaking museum. And if you paid people living wages to be docents, to be able to talk about the history in the city, you have the parks ranger who does it down in Independence Hall, but there are other historical places in the city that needs docents. If we were able to figure out a way to just really capitalize on that museum aspect of our city, that doesn't even include the live art that's happening and that kind of thing, with music and theater and dance, that audiences come from, not from this region, but from all around to come and see. You know what I'm saying? It would be interesting to see how much to compare the two, because you say, we need at least 1%, but I'm sure that art and culture, entertainment was bringing in more than 1% of the city's revenue.
Well, the interesting thing about arts and culture in Philadelphia is that arts and culture was part of the '90s push for economic recovery. A huge part here in Philadelphia, and historic documents, like analyzation of budget and expenditures and returns, shows that there is literally a 3,000% ROI. That's 3,000% return on investment for government spending in Philadelphia city spending on the arts. So for every $1 that gets spent by the city of Philadelphia in the arts, there's $3,000 spent in the taxable economy because of that $1 spent by the city government. That's a massive ROI. For those that don't think about this kind of stuff on a regular basis, governments usually look at ROI in terms of negative percent, in terms of smaller percentages. So like, if they spend $1 to repave a road, right? They do these analyses to figure out how much that increases the economic output in the region where that road was repaved. And if they say spend, $5,000 repaving a quarter mile of road on South Broad, they expect there to be an increase of maybe, $1,000 per 5,000 spent. So, like a 10%, 20% ROI on, so that's 20 cents on every dollar. These same analytical tools are used to analyze government spending on the arts, and it's a 3,000% ROI. And the interesting thing about a 3,000% ROI is in the city of Philadelphia, with the way the tax structure is and with the way that the tax base is, when you increase, when you have a 3,000% increase in expenditures due to this one sector, spending in this one sector, you literally get all that money back. So the city was literally getting every dollar it spent on the arts back in tax revenue by the end of the year. So we've been harping on that point constantly, but I find that a fascinating point. Like even set aside the economic benefits, the arts factors into everything. We definitely that creative mindset is necessary for dealing with modern problems. And I don't think that you can get good solutions without the creative input of the arts sector in a society. To your point, Dr. Hall, there is a definite import to the arts in any society, and I think we lost Dr. Hall, but we still have Drew. Your broadcast looks good.
What happened? Where'd she go?
Looks like
what the hell's happening?
Connectivity with her, but oh, there she's back.
She's back.
Looks like we lost you there for a sec, Doctor, but looks like you're back. You're muted, but let me pin the first screen there. There you am.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is one of the problems with modern broadcast and modern scene collection. I'm collecting remotes from Dr. Hall. I'm collecting remote from Drew. And so,
by the way, before I forget, something Dr. Hall said was about the docents and how many historic places we have in the city. And this is something my father and I talk about all the time, that so many of these places need live-in help, caretakers, groundskeepers, people watching the property and doing security and maintenance, that that alone can take care of somebody's cost of living by, you know, as well as occupations. I just a thought I wanted to throw in there because I was just completely in agreement with what the good doctor was saying, because that's just something I feel that the city is not utilizing to its potential like it should.
I agree. And so government spending on small business, especially artistic small businesses, is essential. I wanted to quickly highlight the fact that the EIDL round 2 is out there. And if you are an artist in Philadelphia, you definitely qualify for the EIDL, and you definitely qualify for the second draw, targeted second draw grant opportunity. And that in the proposed Democratic bill, Democratic Economic Recovery Bill, there is an additional $5,000 being proposed as an automatic grant, again, targeted automatic grant to folks who have businesses with less than 20 employees, live in economically disadvantaged areas, which all of Philadelphia County is, and who had a loss of over 30% of income compared to last year in any quarter of this year, or in any compared to 2019 in any quarter of 2020. Which, if you were an artist, I can guarantee you lost more than 30% of your income. At any rate, that $5,000 is an addition that isn't law yet, and the SBA is still working on sending out emails to everyone who is able to apply for the targeted advance. So the targeted EIDL advance comes from round 1. In round 1, and if you haven't been playing along, in round 1, the EIDL was supposed to give business owners who were without income $10,000 grant, and then an additional 8 weeks of operating expenses. It didn't roll out quite that way due to, let's just call it, let's be nice and call it interpretation. The SBA interpreted the law in such a way that they only gave $1,000 per employee, and so if you were a sole proprietor, you only got $1,000. If you had 2 to 9 employees, you got $2,000 to $9,000. If you had 10 employees, you got the full $10,000 grant. If you had more than 10 employees, you got the full $10,000 grant. And then the application for the loan portion was separate. So what they've done to try and correct this is they are now, with the law that was signed into law in December, on December 26th, they created a targeted advance for round 2 of the EIDL. They set aside some money and said, okay, everyone who applied in 2020 for the EIDL and got the EIDL but didn't get their full grant, their $10,000 grant, can now apply again and get their full $10,000 grant. They started with people who didn't get a grant at all and were in an economically impacted zone. Then they added people who only got part of their grant and less than a certain number of employees. I believe it was 300, and didn't get their full grant, and were in an economically impacted zone. They are not through, so the methodology here that they decided to use was, hey, we're going to send an email to everyone because we know all the people who should be getting this targeted grant. It's not working that way. They didn't send an email to everyone, and they're not through sending an email to everyone. Some of the statistical tracking apps out there that that I'm familiar with have polled people who got the EIDL and seen about 25% of the people who should qualify for this targeted grant have gotten their invitation email. The other 75% haven't. There is an email address, targeted EIDL grant at sba.gov. I will put the email address in the comments. And if you'd like some advice or want to get together and talk about any of this, I've talked with Dr. Hall, I've talked with other people directly, and I'm happy to help. If you email them and, like if you research, figure out you qualify for the targeted EIDL advance and you haven't gotten it yet, haven't gotten an invitation email yet, just email them. Just be polite, say, hey, here's my EIDL loan number, where I did not get an advance, or I did not get, whatever part of the advance. And through my research, I see that I qualify. Is there any update? When could I expect to see the email invitation? Be polite. They're regular people working in a stressful situation. So, definitely reach out, say, hey, where's that money? And go get your money. That's going to be the recurring tagline for this broadcast. Go get your money. But definitely go get your money. I want to, and I'm sorry I'm running over. We're 6 minutes over, as you can see by the lovely timestamp. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, as always. Sorry for any technical difficulties. I know we had some interrupts, some technical difficulties here and there with audio and whatever. I apologize. I do what I can, but I'm one guy sitting at a computer. So we'll get it together. But go get your money. Feel free to watch the broadcast in rerun, because all of the interrupts should go away, because the data did eventually hit the server. So feel free to watch the recording of the broadcast. And if you have any questions, always feel free to contact me directly. I will be happy to chat with you via social media or phone or Zoom, whatever you need, to get you the information that you need and want. I'd like to thank my guests again, Drew Nugent, Nugent's Follies, Dr. Ardencia Hall Karambe, and you have Kaleidoscope Cultural Arts Collective in your...
Yeah, we actually have we did this show in the fall for the Fringe Festival, but we videotaped it, and it's now a virtual theater performance. And so we've been asked to bring it back. And so we're actually showing the show this Saturday at 7 o'clock. And it's going to be showing through Zoom, and you could purchase tickets through, I believe it's Quaker City. The Deltas, we're being one of the Divine Nine, the Deltas are hosting us. And I can give you that information to post, James, if you want it, but I'm sorry, it's not right off the top of my tongue.
Yeah,
but or you could also hit us up. Okay.
Forward the information to Meg.
Okay. The title of the show is hashtag All Lives Don't Matter.
Awesome.
So.
And we'll get that up on our social media, and probably as a separate post. So again, thank you, Drew. Any last thoughts?
Oh God, by all means, it's been a lot of fun talking with you both. I must add that it's so funny hearing the Follies mentioned as what I'm known for, because it's always been it's been a fairly new idea with us. I mean, my big thing the last 10 years is I've been a band leader with my band, the Midnight Society, and we specialize in playing jazz from the basically the turn of the century through the 1930s, everything before bebop and swing. And well, yeah. Anyway, we won't get into the specifics, but it's just been a great time to be here. I have a new album out that we recorded right here in my living room. It's actually part 2 of a series of trio recordings, because the most booked band size that we've been getting booked for anymore is the trio. And I don't mind doing it. It's great to have, it's better than a solo act, but I still miss having a 6 to 8 piece band with a lot of different sounds and colors. And but like I said, we got to record in my living room, which was a lot of fun. Got to use my own piano, and I didn't realize how great the acoustics are in here. So it was recorded here, mixed in West Philly, and then mastered in North Philly, right near Temple. And so it's a real legit Philly jazz product, and we're calling it Just the Trio Us, and it's volume 2, featuring Chris Davis Shannon and Brennan Ernst. And everything's up on our Bandcamp site, which is drewnugent.bandcamp.com. I'm trying to reroute all of our following and fan base and anybody who just wants to grab our music to go there, because honestly, that's where we're seeing the most return on our music. I mean, we don't get jack shit from, like iTunes or Amazon or anything else. Like, Bandcamp is legitimately the only platform that I have come to find that actually remotely cares about artists. And I think almost every day I'm at least getting a few bucks in the PayPal from Bandcamp, which is it's a godsend. That's grocery money, baby. But it's an exciting time as much as it's a scary time, and you just got to stay with it and stay grounded. And that's just what I'm trying to do, and trying to keep new things flowing and my eyes on the horizon, and just keep looking for the next project. And speaking of which, on June 12th, God willing, we're doing a big to-do over at Fort Mifflin, which is one of the most somehow well-kept secrets of Philadelphia, is Fort Mifflin, which is like a 400-year-old fort right by the airport. And it's amazing to just go and walk around. But once a year for the last 9 years, we've been doing an event there to raise money for the fort. And it's been a speakeasy night, but now due to the current restrictions, we didn't do it last year. We just did an outdoor event in like October, which was a nice turnout. So we're going to do it in June. On June 12th, we're going to do a lawn party, and we're allowing vendors to come in for a very low fee. That's going, again, everything's going to the maintenance of the fort. Even my band and myself, we collect a very minimal amount on this. It's a labor of love doing this event every year, and I think this year is going to be one of the crowning achievements of running events at Fort Mifflin. And we have a lot of sponsors coming in and a lot of vendors, and we're going to have a 5-piece band, and it's just going to be a great time. Everything's going to be outdoors, socially distanced. That's the beautiful part about that property, is that it's so large. You can easily fit 100 to 200 people there, and you wouldn't even guess it, because it's so sprawling that we're able to make it a safe experience for everyone. And all safety precautions, of course, will be put in full practice. So that said, we hope folks will join us for that, and mark off your calendars for June 12th at Fort Mifflin. And I think that's it for me. I'm just really glad to be still doing things like this and talking to other folks and functioning like a somewhat, human again, that not living in my quarantine shell here.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this week. And for everyone tuning in online, really appreciate it. Again, sorry for any technical difficulties. Please consider joining our Patreon. Our Patreon subscribers, patrons, they help us maintain this broadcast, with as little as $1 a month. For as little as $1 a month, you too can support a starving artist. No, for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to exclusive content and some interesting tools and useful news reports that we don't run on our social media, or get insights into projects and items that we're doing well before the public knows about them. Tune in next week at 10 a.m. For the live broadcast. Feel free to watch this broadcast in its recorded form on Facebook or YouTube. We also have outlets on Mob Crush, Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, and those are all the ones I can think of right off the top of my head. But like, share, and subscribe to all of them. We really appreciate your help in getting our information out there. It's only through your support and the fact that you watch and that you subscribe and that you like our content that we can do things like push on the elected officials in our fair city to help the economy in the most direct way that we can think of, which is funding the arts. You're not going to get a better return on your investment than 3,000%. There is nothing else that the government spends money on that brings that money directly back to the government. So just encourage your local representatives to actually spend money on the arts, support the arts, make them an integral part of our society. That's all I have for this week. I'm gonna send you guys outside. You can take a look at beautiful Key West, and I will play us off with some music. But thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you next week.